evening, everybody. Welcome to the ProLib Show. I am Dom. With me, as always, is Kitty over there.
Hi.
Hi. Um, it's been. It was very difficult. I want to say this. It was very difficult to pick a topic for the show tonight because there
So
are
much has happened.
so much is happening. I'd like to keep the show hyper focused on like one thing because there's only the two of us. We don't have writers. We don't have other people to switch to. So it's hard to like have a bunch of different topics going on. So I picked this one specifically for two reasons. First of all, it's an absolute travesty. They are repeating history. We're going to talk about that. Of course, Kitty is LGBTQ, trans, queer, bi
Yeah, I'm
person.
just I'm just a one person
Uh,
like
right. You've
pride
got like
flag.
three different flags or so. Four. I don't even know. You've got them as many as you want. Really, I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have a lot of trans people in our audience, and so
Indeed.
there are probably 20 other topics considering trans people that we could talk about. But this is timely. Report came out just earlier today, and so we're gonna talk about this. We're gonna try to stay centered on this one topic. We'll probably. The other thing is that this topic links into a lot of other things that are going on, so I'm sure
So we
other
might
stuff's
have
gonna come up as
weeds a
well.
little bit.
But we're going to try to stay out of them as much as possible. Anyway, you're either watching us on YouTube or Twitch. Good evening. Tonight we're talking about how the Trump administration apparently wants to take away the Second Amendment rights of trans people. Yeah, so let me share this. We've got this story here from CNN, which again I think was just just before we went on the air. So this is quite timely. The Trump DOJ is looking at ways to ban transgender Americans from owning guns, sources say. In the wake of the Minneapolis Catholic Church shooting, I was trying to find a way not to say that word, but I said it anyway. Senior Justice Department officials are weighing proposals to limit transgender people's right to possess firearms, according to two officials familiar with the internal discussions. The talks, described as preliminary in nature, we're going to get into that, appear to build on an idea that has gained some currency in conservative media. Since the Minneapolis shooting that killed 2 children and injured 21, most of them children, at Annunciation Catholic Church, an attack that police say was carried out by a 23-year-old transgender woman. The article continues, and I will put it in the chat so that
So
read it if you want.
I mean,
Go ahead.
last I checked, there were 147 school events just this year, and
Right.
we are only what 7 months, 8 months in.
7,
Or,
yeah.
we've gotten through 8 months of the year. Like we're in the
Right.
beginning of September,
Right.
and now if you actually look by the numbers, I think there's maybe only 3 or 4 of these mass events that have been perpetrated by somebody who was trans.
Right.
Yet, if you look at like even beyond school events, going to just mass casualty events with firearms, absolutely the majority of the people that are doing them, they look like you, Dom. They fit your demographic,
Yep.
waspy, white, male,
Angry.
yeah, well, we all have reason to be,
We all have our reasons.
yeah, we all have our reasons. But the fact of the matter is, after Sandy Hook, they did nothing to try to limit these events. And after Pulse, they did nothing. After Parkland, they did nothing. It
After
isn't now.
Uvalde.
After Uvalde, they did nothing. Like so many of these mass casualty events where, they've done nothing, just thoughts and prayers and nothing else. And now it was especially icky for me with this particular event when people finally were like, all right, we've had enough. Like, thoughts and prayers aren't cutting it because, they were in a church, they were in the middle of praying, and it still happened. So, you know, thoughts and prayers obviously aren't going to fix it. And people are like, how dare you minimize their religious faith and their Catholic faith? And I swear that's going to be my 13th reason is people like that, that they want to demonize people for saying, hey, thoughts and prayers aren't stopping these events.
And just as
So,
a
like,
reminder,
let's
before you
do
continue,
something.
just a reminder, December 23, Senate Republicans blocked an assault weapons ban and background checks bill. This was in front of the Senate. It was ready to go to the president's desk. President Biden was ready to go to his desk, and the Senate Republicans blocked it from happening. And now
And it was
suddenly,
pretty watered down too. Like it
it was
was
pretty
like
watered down,
it was like bare minimum.
sure, but the Senate Republicans had this opportunity to address it in December of 2023. Now, there were other opportunities. It's just the most recent one that came
Yeah.
to my mind, and blocked it. And now we're seeing from, you know, uh, these Trump DOJ officials that they're going to
I
only
have
take
a
away
theory.
the gun rights of trans people.
I have a theory.
Please.
The reason why, because again, like we're talking less than half a dozen. Like you go back the last, since Columbine, I would even wager there have been single digit numbers. We'll say like maybe half a dozen that I can recall off the top of my head of people that are trans identified that are perpetrators of these types of events.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always been thoughts and prayers.
Sure.
Well,
Or they
now
say we
people,
can't politicize it. It just happened.
yeah,
We can't politicize it.
exactly,
Right.
exactly. But it basically comes down to thoughts and prayers.
Sure.
And now the people are like, hey, thoughts and prayers aren't working. So we need something done. So rather than actually address the issue in a way that would actually help, it allows them to continue their war against trans people because they actually lucked out in a way, like as gory and like macabre as that is. They lucked out that the shooter, was trans identified, and that basically gave them their scapegoat where they're like, okay, we can use this to continue to go after trans people. And if they do start wanting to round up trans people, you know, I and Vosh has his issues, but one thing that, I agree with him on was the whole, if you are queer, if you are LGBT, learn how to use a firearm, stay strapped, get clapped, like learn your neighbors, like have people close to you that can have your back, like, because really it's community building that is going to help keep us safe. You basically want someone to hide you, a la Anne Frank, if it comes down to it. But also, with the rise of hate crimes against LGBTQ individuals, like just learning and when I say, go get it, if you feel like you could actually safely use it, like I'm talking train with it, familiarize yourself with it. If you think that you could never actually like pull the trigger to defend yourself, then don't get one. It is not safe for you to get one if you don't think that you could actually pull the trigger. This is for people that, believe that they could if they needed to in the event of like their life is in danger.
Right.
But like Vosh and I are in agreement on that, that find local community, like know your neighbors and make sure that you train with a weapon and have a weapon, because people are crazy, and like we are on the list of people that are getting scapegoated, that are
Right.
getting targeted first. Like they're not starting with the Jews first, and they didn't start with the Jews first in Nazi
Oh, we're going to
Germany
get to
either.
that just in a few minutes. We're going to get to the history parallels
Yeah,
in a few
but the
minutes. But
fact is
correct.
they always go for the what they say. Good comedy is punching up, not punching down,
Right.
because punching down is just mean,
Correct.
because you don't want to hit a target that is weaker than you. Well, they always go for the weakest targets, and so when you're talking about a society like the queers, the disabled, minorities just in general, like whatever scapegoated minority it might be, they're always the first ones, but it's usually the queers and the disableds that end up being the
Yep.
first ones targeted, because they're the ones that the vast majority of people would consider icky or outside the norm or
Right.
divergent. So it's easier to sell getting rid of those people, and then you move up the line.
Well, and what we saw, this was earlier this year, of course, but this was the story from Teen Vogue. Everyone's seen it, I think. RFK wants to send people to wellness farms. This was a big thing earlier this year. This was in April. And it was a clip from a July 2024 virtual town hall where Kennedy argues that the U.S. should combat addiction by opening, quote, wellness farms. So basically institutionalizing people for drug addiction. Now, the thing is that, who goes into the wellness farms? Well, they just decide that. Like who's getting deported, by ICE? Well, whoever they decide. I mean, Tom Homan said it's racial profiling is how they do it. They don't have anything else than, oh, your skin is of a certain tone. We're
Who's
going to
getting
assume
put under conservatorships? Like,
right, right.
if you find the right judge or the right doctor to sign off on it, then it could be anybody.
Sure, exactly. And this is, we've talked about this before, but what this really is this ties back to what it means to be conservative versus what it means to be liberal. I think we talked about this on the last show with Maya, actually. But conservatives see conformity as moral, and they see nonconformity as immoral, because to conservatives, there's a certain box that people fit in. And if you're a straight man, that means there's a certain way that you live and dress and behave that is moral. And as long as you're acting within that, you're a perfectly moral person. And that's how they'll say, oh, well, what Trump said about, grabbing women's genitals, well, that was just locker room talk, right? That excused it. See, that kind of behavior for a conservative is totally fine. As long as you don't mean it, you can say whatever you want. For more liberal-minded people, nonconformity is not immoral. Nonconformity is a celebration of humanity. It's a good thing that people are different, that they have different weights or heights or hair colors or tattoos or piercings or whatever, as she shows off her piercings and tattoos. I'm just teasing you. But that is part of the liberal mindset. Like, yeah, we should celebrate our diversity. We should celebrate our differences. And the conservative mindset is that different is not only immoral, but it can be dangerous. And that's why you see all this stuff. What's his face? Dr. Oz yesterday said, basically, if you have chronic disease, chronic pain, or you're disabled, it's your fault. And that society shouldn't bear that burden that you've brought upon yourself. Yes, that's Dr. Oz just yesterday, folks. That's
Every
where we're
single
at.
person is one incident away from being
Absolutely.
disabled.
I have a colleague who signed a man up for life insurance. He's a 35-year-old man. Signed him up for like $350,000 of life insurance. The next morning, he was walking out his front door to go to work. There was ice on the front step. He slipped on the step, broke his neck, and died in front of his front door.
Jesus.
Perfectly healthy man, just got approved for $350,000 of life insurance the night before and died that next morning because he slipped on the steps. He was doing nothing. He was going to work. Just slipped on the steps and died, The idea that you can blame people for chronic pain or chronic disability or, any of those types of autism, that there's something to blame with autism is ludicrous. But that's part of that conservative mindset. A normal moral person wouldn't be autistic. A normal moral person wouldn't have chronic pain because they would have, eaten well or exercised, whatever it is that.
Yet it's these normal moral people, like church leaders and Republicans that are constantly getting popped for like
Sure,
Epstein type shit.
Absolutely. I'm not defending it. I'm just saying that's the difference
No.
between the conservative and liberal mindset.
There's a huge amount of cognitive dissonance
Of
there.
course,
You
and
know.
hypocrisy, 100%.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why the liberal mindset of, yeah, we should have social safety nets and we should have universal health care, and healthcare should be a human right, and water should be a human right, and housing should be a human right, because we want there to be an even floor for everyone to start at. Where the conservatives say, well, you should be providing your own floor. And if you're a moral person, then you provide your own floor. And if you are, for whatever reason, whether it's ADHD or anxiety or depression or anything, if you're not able to overcome that on your own, it's simply a symbolizing your lack of morality.
And these are the same people that want to ban the types of pharmaceuticals that would allow somebody with depression or ADHD to better be able to be a productive member of the workforce.
Because in their mind, if your morality was strong enough or your will was strong enough, whatever, you'd be able to overcome it. And so it has nothing to do with the pharmaceuticals, has to do with your shortcoming as a human being, that you're not able to push past it. And I again, don't agree with any of this. This is just, how conservatives see the world. And I am being monolithic and I am being unfair. There's a lot of conservatives that don't feel this way. I understand. We're painting in very broad strokes here.
There's also a lot of conservatives that demonize homosexuality, yet whenever the Republican National Convention's in town, Grindr crashes from too many users.
Sure. The point of this conversation isn't necessarily about the hypocrisy. We have done, but we could do more streams on the hypocrisy of conservatism.
Oh yeah.
Maybe that'll be our next show. But the point here is, this is that mindset that if you were, basically what they're saying is that being trans is a symptom of your lack of morality. And because your morality is so low that you can be trans, it makes sense that your morality is also so low that you could cause a mass event. Now, again, I don't believe that at all, but that is the reasoning, that is the argument behind this move to take the Second Amendment rights away from trans people.
It's also to make it easier to round them up.
Sure. No, we aren't there yet. We're going to get there in a minute. Yes, you're jumping ahead. I'm just trying to establish the mindset of the morality of the conservative that allows this type of thing, because this also goes against everything that they have shouted from the hilltops for my entire life about Second Amendment rights. That the reason that we have Second Amendment rights is to defend ourselves against a tyrannical government, and it's why they were mad about the Branch Davidians, and it's why they were mad about Ruby Ridge, and it's why they were mad about how Ted Kaczynski was taken in. I don't know if you guys remember that, but he was arrested by the FBI in like a sting, and there was a bunch of stuff like, oh, well, did they violate his property rights when they arrested him? It's like, he's the Unabomber. He was like blowing people up with mail, like, just go take him. But there was, anyway, that is all born of this difference in how we view morality with a more conservative mindset and a more liberal mindset. That is the major crux that at many times in this nation's history, we have overcome. We have gone beyond that to say, hey, you know what? Let's pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Let's pass women's suffrage. Hey, you know what? Prohibition was a really bad idea. Let's get rid of that. There have been many, many times in this country. The 14th Amendment. I mean, the 14th Amendment was a time when we overcame these kinds of things. Kitty's favorite president, FDR, passing the New Deal. I wasn't
the one to bring it up this time.
I know. I beat you to it. But the New Deal was a time when we compromised and we said, hey, this is for the good of everyone. And conservatives didn't like it very much, but they knew that it was good economically and politically at the time, and yada, yada.
And the fact of the matter is they also knew that, we were about to go off of a cliff, and it was going to go like, let them eat cake.
Yeah, if the New Deal didn't pass, there would be, the United States would be balkanized, much like Eastern Europe is or was. I mean, it still is in some ways, you know, the way it was in late 90s, early 2000s with Bosnia, Herzegovina, and
Yeah,
Czechoslovakia
the
and
United
all that
States
stuff.
would not exist anymore.
No, 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 no. We would have completely fallen apart, balkanized, and been cannibalized by probably.
Mexico and Canada.
Well, Russia would have taken Alaska, for sure. California and Oregon would probably be their own country. Anyway, getting sidetracked. The state of Washington would definitely have joined Canada. Like, let's just be honest.
Oh yeah.
Maine, Washington would both be parts of Canada. Probably down to like Vermont would be just Canadian right now. And what we're seeing overall is this break where conservatives have said, and again, I'm being monolithic, I'm painting with very broad brushes, but conservatives as a whole have said, we see too many instances of things which are outside of our moral bubble. You'll see them complain about seeing, you know, two women married to each other in a Disney film, and they'll freak out about it on Facebook. And it's like, this is what you do with your day? But that's what they do with their day. And they've seen too many instances of things that violate what they believe is the moral structure for a moral society, and they believe society has left them. And so what they're trying to do is pull society back to a place where they can easily define it and easily agree that it is moral in structure. Okay? Now, I disagree because I think that none of this is immoral. I don't see anything immoral about gay people or trans people existing and just living their lives without shame. But there's a lot of conservatives that feel differently. And so you're seeing this pushback towards it. And what that has resulted in is now we're going to take away the Second Amendment rights of trans people because they're trans. Because these same conservatives that think seeing two women married to each other in a Disney movie is an attempt by gay people to convince children to have sex with them. That's the line that they draw, which to me is bizarre. It's just that two women are married. And there's a lot of women in real life who are married to each other because they love each other and they want to spend the rest of their lives together. And it has literally nothing to do with children anywhere, except that they're like, hey, you know, when I was a kid, I felt uncomfortable about the fact that I was gay. And so maybe some kids out there who are similarly feeling uncomfortable will see me and be like, hey, it's okay if you're gay. It's fine.
I mean,
Don't feel bad.
it's almost more important to get married if you're queer than if you're straight, just because the benefit that you get, like the legal protections, like if
Oh,
your
sure.
significant other is in an accident,
Yeah.
and their family doesn't approve of your
Yeah. And
queerness,
you can
then
visit
they
them in
could
the hospital and
bar
stuff. Yeah,
you
yeah.
from being able to visit the person that you love, the person you may live with.
Sure.
But their family are like, no, no homo. So they're going
Right.
to bar you so that you can't be there for
Well,
that loved one.
and that's exactly what we're talking about, because for the conservative mind, that is immoral. And so, yeah, I don't want you visiting my loved one who you're married to because I think your relationship with them is immoral. And that would be celebrating that immorality by allowing you to visit them after this horrific car accident that they've survived, whatever the situation is. And that's why you're not going to see conservatives standing up for the Second Amendment rights of trans people. Because to them, if you're trans, you are already immoral. So you don't deserve Second Amendment rights. Kitty, do you know what this sounded like to me?
What?
I'm going to pull this up. So this is a lot of text here, guys. I'm just going to warn you. And I'm not going to read this whole thing to you. I just want to read one quick paragraph.
They don't want red flag laws to stop, people who say they're going to do a bad thing with a firearm, or that might trigger if someone gets arrested for beating their wife,
Sure.
Like they don't want laws like that to protect people when someone's actually been hurt.
Because to them, if a woman was moral, then she wouldn't do anything that deserved the domestic violence. So that's how they feel. So I'm just going to read, I'm not going to read this whole paragraph. I'm just going to read some excerpts. In 1938, Hitler signed a new gun control act. Enemies of the state had been removed from society, so some restrictions could be slightly liberalized, especially for Nazi party members. But Jews were prohibited from working in the firearms industry, and 22 caliber hollow point ammunition was banned. The German Jews were ordered to surrender all their weapons. The police had the records on all who had registered them. And even those who gave up their weapons voluntarily were turned over to the Gestapo. So even if you'd had a gun before the Gun Control Act went through, you were still turned over to the police just because you were Jewish and owned a gun. This took place in the weeks before what became known as the Night of the Broken Glass, or Kristallnacht, I think is how you say it. German's terrible.
Yeah, Kristallnacht.
I think it's Kristallnacht. Occurred in November 1938. The Jews were disarmed before it. Minimizing any risk of resistance is the strongest evidence that the pogrom was planned in advance. For those that don't know, basically a bunch of Jews were slaughtered in the ghettos. And they didn't have any guns to protect themselves anymore because the Gun Control Act said they weren't allowed to have them. And the police knew exactly which Jews had the guns because they'd already been reported. Or the Gestapo did, I'm sorry. Because they'd already been registered with the police. And so the police said, yeah, this house, they have guns. This house, they have guns. And so they could be very systematic and meticulous about how they murdered Jews during that pogrom. Now, this article is very centered on Jewish people. Please keep in mind that also the disabled were part of that. Homosexuals were part of that. Of course, they didn't differentiate back then between homosexual and trans. So it's not me saying, obviously trans people were part of that, but they would have just termed anyone.
Really just all of the minority groups that weren't really well regarded,
Right.
the LGBT, the Roma, the disabled, the people that they could easily punch down at were the first, and then
trade unionists. There were a lot of union members targeted during that time as well.
And communists.
And communists, of course. Yes. So, I know that those of us on the left are accused a lot of times, maybe rightly so, of overblowing some things. I don't think there's a way to overstate the danger that this poses. I have never been an advocate of assault weapons in the hands of people, but I've always been an advocate of knowing how to use a firearm and owning a firearm. I've used many throughout my life. I've fired shotguns and 22s and anything in 30-06. I've fired, hunting rifles and handguns. Never fired a 50 caliber or anything. I fired a 45 many occasions. Fired revolvers.
I got to fire a 50 cal sniper rifle. I was laying in a
never gotten to
prone
fire
position.
50
It was
cal.
out in Ocala, and it was amazing.
I fired a 308, which hurt really bad because that was one of the first rifles. First time I'd ever fired a rifle on a tripod, and I did it wrong, and my shoulder was very mad at me for a couple of days.
Ooh, yeah.
I didn't. I braced it like too far down my shoulder instead of in the meat, and yeah. Anyway, don't do that. I fired a long time ago a sawed-off shotgun, which looks really cool in movies. Not fun in real life because you have to like hold it like this when you fire it, so it doesn't fly back and hit you in the face and take out all your teeth. Hi, Titan. Sorry, I did not let Discord know. I forgot. My point is that I think that it's good for the populace to own guns because it does tamper down a tyrannical government or a government that wishes to be tyrannical. That is an argument that I have always agreed with. I don't like, normal citizens having like grenades and landmines and assault rifles and that sort of assault weapons. I agree with the fact that sawed-off shotguns should not be legal because You can seriously injure yourself if you don't know what you're doing with a sawed-off shotgun and you're not very careful with it. So I do agree with some restrictions on weapons, but I also understand that there is this argument to be made that you can better withstand a National Guard coming in to take over your streets if you're an armed populace than you can if you aren't armed.
Well, and here's the thing, like I almost disagree to a small point.
Sure.
Just because when it comes down to it, the US military has us, outgunned just
Oh, 100%.
like 1,000,000%. Like they could
Oh, yeah.
literally just drone strike your house. So
Sure.
like you're not going to actually like, overthrow a tyrannical government. I think it's more like, the threat of it, where it's like it's not so much that having the guns will actually allow you to fight back, but more like they act as a bit of a deterrent, because
Yeah.
it's going to, while it's not mutually assured destruction because the government would win,
Oh,
in
100%.
that battle,
Yeah. Not
it
even
is
a fight,
enough
but
of a point where like it at least keeps, and it also keeps the populace a little bit cowed, where they think, oh well, we could totally take over, like a tyrannical government. But then the government also knows that if they did try to take the guns, like that would, tip off that they'd gone
sure.
tyrannical, so don't
Well,
try
and
to take them.
here,
It's a mess. It's a complicated
well,
mess.
here's the logistical problem that the United States military would have if that was really what was going to go on. And I don't think that's going to happen on a large scale. Obviously, it's happening with the National Guard right now in D.C. and possibly Chicago and Los Angeles, or not Los Angeles, well, and Los Angeles, but New Orleans. Those are the next two places, Chicago and New Orleans, apparently the next two places Trump wants to go. You have a logistical issue in that if every American were armed, right, who is also capable of competently firing the firearm, let's just say that's 200 million Americans. And I don't know what the actual numbers are, but they're elderly, they're children, they're disabled, they're people, that wouldn't be able to effectively wield a firearm. But let's just say it's 200 million Americans, give or take, that would at least be able to use a weapon to defend themselves and possibly hurt someone. Well, the amount of military that you would need and police that you would need, we don't have that, right? The main reason that crime doesn't happen in our communities is that, on the whole, people don't want to commit crimes. There are a lot more people in existence who want to obey the law than people who want to break the law.
And those that break the law, usually it's because of poverty.
Well, we're going to get to that in just a second. Titan, I got to get a new one. The old one, I ordered it from Temu and it broke.
What did you get for ordering from Temu?
Well, and a lot of the crimes that are committed are not violent crimes. If I were to, if we were at the mall or something and I stole your purse, that's not a violent crime, right? I'm just, stealing your purse. Or if I go into a grocery store and I steal some food, that's not a violent crime. So not only is the total amount of people who want to commit crimes much smaller than the people who don't want to commit crimes, and I'm not talking about crimes of opportunity or crimes where like I got to steal some bread to feed my kids. That's not what I'm talking. I'm talking about people that are actually kleptomaniacs or, committing crimes to be malicious, is very small. And then the portion of them that want to create violent crimes is a very small portion of them. It's the violent crimes versus the rest of crime is like 5% or so. It's a very, very small portion of the overall crimes that are committed. Most crimes that are committed are financial crimes or crimes of
Drug-related crimes.
Right, that sort of thing. Like white collar crime is by far the most crime that's committed, especially financially, since they're usually stealing a lot of things that are very high worth. And then what we have created is we've created drug crimes that. Why are drug crimes a crime? Because we just said, hey, doing drugs and possessing drugs is a crime. No one. I don't harm anyone if I have drugs on me. I mean, myself possibly, but just possessing a drug does not harm someone. That's not a violent. It's not a violent action to just have
Well,
in your possession cocaine, right?
there used to be a point in the United States where drugs were legal. Like they had heroin in like
Sure.
patent medicine, like kids' cough medicine.
I mean, that's why
Uh,
Coca-Cola is called
Coca-Cola, because it used to
Coca-Cola.
have Coke in it, like
Um,
not the cola kind.
and yes, exactly. And Maya, that's why that's what I'm getting to. There have been many cases in history where minority neighborhoods have been maliciously treated by law enforcement authorities. And it was one of the reasons why the Black Panthers urged everyone to get armed in their communities. Because they said, hey, if
Tulsa.
we know how to use guns and we know how to arm ourselves, we know how to protect ourselves, the cops can't just come in here and lynch us.
Yeah, but then Tulsa happened, and they
And then Tulsa
firebombed
happened. I'm
Black
talking
Wall
about
Street.
pre-Tulsa. I'm talking about pre-Tulsa. And it was one of the things that MLK Jr. was really criticized about by the black community because he said, no, I got a different way. I have a peaceful way. We're gonna walk peacefully. And John Lewis carried that on. And John Lewis took a lot of flack throughout his life and his career because he always preached nonviolence. He always preached, no, you do it. You respond with love. You respond with respect, and that wins out in the end. It doesn't win out in the moment all the time. I know because I got stitches at Selma, but not me. I'm speaking as John Lewis, by the way. I was not alive for Selma. This is before
Yeah,
I
so
lived.
a wee bit before your time.
A wee bit before my time. But he said, love and respect was the way to win, and I believe that he is right. Until you have a president actively taking National Guard troops from one state and using them to invade another state, that is a very different situation than what we have faced in this country in a long time. Now, there's a lot of people like, we've never faced something like this before. Yes, we have. It's been a long time. And what we faced, the last time we really faced something like this was during, well, there was some stuff during the Civil Rights era, but all of that was at the behest of those governors. That was the governors, asking the National Guard or asking other states to send their National Guard in to stop things. We've had, in a very limited capacity, National Guard troops show up for riots, like they showed up for the LA riots in '94, whenever that was. And there have been other instances. But the last time we had like a president sending troops into other states was during Reconstruction. Happened a couple of times to tamp down some particular situations. And I think there were like 3 of them. It wasn't that many. Then before that, you get to the Civil Rights era. And then before that, you get to some stuff that happened, around the forming of the country. It was a very, we don't really talk about how messy the first 30 years of this country were, but they were very, very messy. Like until Jefferson was the 3rd president, and really until the end of his 2nd term was when things really were calmed down, because there were a lot of Tories that were still mad, and there were a lot of people in the back country, especially in South and North Carolina, that used the situation of the Revolutionary War to inflame their own tensions between families and stuff. And there were some actions by the U.S. government, to send the army into some situations to quell them down, that sort of thing. And as there was the move out west, there were times when the U.S. Army would move into a territory or into a state in order to protect people from indigenous populations that were very, very mad about the people moving into their land, their sacred lands, and were killing them. But those are the only situations that I can think of that are similar to this, that would be on that same scale. But it has never been where the president says, hey, go to, this city, National Guard, and take up residence. I wouldn't say never, because that did happen out west a few times where in localized places. I mean, that's what Custer was basically doing when he died. Basically, the same kind of action that we're seeing today. He was tamping down crime. It was just the crime was the indigenous people who had lived here for thousands of years who were mad about white people suddenly showing up on their tribal lands, and they're like, "What are you doing here? Leave, or I'll kill you." And that's nothing like this. So in some ways, it's similar to those sorts of actions. And that was really before we had national guards of different states and stuff like we do now. So the structure of the entire country and the structure of the military is very different. But we haven't had this. You could argue Kent State. You could argue some of the stuff during the civil rights era, the early 60s especially, is similar to this. But again, in every single one of those instances, the governor wanted them. The only time that we get another situation where the president was putting troops in a state over the protests of the governor or the people, because sometimes there were territories where they didn't have a governor yet, was during that move out west when it was the Department of Indian Affairs. I'm sorry, that's what it was called. I'm not calling it that. That's just what it was called. We're taking actions that local populaces didn't agree with, because local populaces usually wanted to find, not always, they usually wanted to find ways to work with the indigenous people. And you would have actions from the Department of Indian Affairs that were antagonistic.
You think?
So that is what's different about this. Now, Governor Pritzker says that the troops are there. Trump's regime has not confirmed that yet. Governor Pritzker says they're at an army base outside of town. And we're going to see how that works out. Here's the big issue. If the Trump administration can determine one subset to take guns away from, they can then start determining others. So, of course, they're going to start with the trans people, because the conservatives find trans people immoral. And then they'll move on
we're
to...
a smaller portion of
and you're a smaller portion of...
population.
Right.
And
sure.
a lot of people have, a bit of homophobia, transphobia, even if they're not outwardly calling
Right.
for us to be unalived, they might have an ick because they don't understand, because they might not know any trans people.
Right. Or they've been taught by a lot of it is that there are other people in their friend or social group that are homophobic or transphobic, and they have it's their insecurity. I'm so insecure in myself that I have to measure myself against the people that I'm friends with. And since my friends are homophobic and transphobic, if I don't do that, then I'm not going to get the validation of their friendship. And because I'm not able to give myself my own validation, because my insecurities are too high, I need the validation of these bigoted people. So I need to act bigoted in the same way that they do, so that I can gain their validation.
If I don't see the Second Amendment freaks, the amosexuals coming out to defend trans people's rights to own firearms, which I know they're not going to.
They're not.
But if I don't, I will never shut up about it. I will never shut up about it.
I hope that I'm wrong. I really do. But
we've already seen the Ben Shapiro's not coming out for free speech while it's under attack.
But what you have to understand about conservatives is that these are not brave people.
No,
they routinely go on their social media accounts to brag about how scared they are. They will brag about how scared they are in cities. They will brag about how scared they are of gay people in Disney movies. They will brag about how scared they are of hearing someone speak Spanish at Walmart. They will brag.
Wasn't there one of the Trump admin officials that basically said, "Yeah, I'm so I'm a big tech
guy, but I don't wear my seatbelt in DC in case I get carjacked, so I can..."
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, I think it might have been Benny John. I don't remember who it was. I mean, this whole thing in DC started because Big Balls got his ass kicked by a couple of teenagers, and Trump got so scared of DC that he had to send the military in. The entire modern conservative movement is about bragging about how cowardly they are.
Well,
They are
30 years of
terrified
Fox
of
News
everything.
propaganda that, everything is coming to get you
Right.
and the conservative way of life is under attack. There's a war on Christmas. There's
There's
a war on
yes.
Christianity.
Sure.
Like there's
Sure.
it's like,
Why not?
can
Right.
we not?
Well, and that's the big thing, is that because liberals aren't afraid of modern society, we have trouble relating. We don't understand this fear around drag queens. Like, why are you so afraid of drag queens? But they are terrified of. They're like
yeah,
the
I heard it was a
elephant in the
15-year-old
mouse.
girl that broke his nose.
That's
Titan said.
yes, yes, exactly. It was the little girl who broke his nose. These, they are terrified of everything. They're the elephant running from the mouse. And now they want to turn our entire society into a society that is as cowardly as they are. And because
hasn't brain scans showed that like conservatives like have like a more like overactive like fear center of the brain
Yes.
just in general?
yes, yes. So that is the problem. The other major problem, I mean, we already talked about morality, but the other problem that gives reasons why liberals and conservatives aren't matching in a lot of these issues is that we just aren't afraid like they are. They're terrified of things. And when a trauma victim says, "Hey, I need some safe space. I need some space away from people who are going to use my trauma against me," they're like, "Oh, well, you need a safe space." Fucker, you're trying to turn all of DC into a safe space for conservatives.
That's exactly like Trump straight up said that it's a safe space and that it was like
Right.
a word of art,
Right. And it's like, well, I thought that safe spaces were bad.
And these are the same people that get mad about trigger warnings when it's like, we still talk about the topics. The trigger warnings just like, hey, just to give you, trigger and content warnings are like, hey, we're going to touch on some heavy stuff. So if you don't feel like you are in a good place for that, then sit this one out. But we still talk about the stuff. It's not like a censorship thing. It's not we're not going to talk about these things. It's just we're being decent human beings to say,
Right.
hey, these can be sensitive topics that might be upsetting to some people. So
Right.
let's let them know ahead of time so that they can make their judgment what's
Right.
best for them.
What we're doing is we are putting the onus of personal responsibility on the content creator to make sure that when they share out their content to people, that they're doing it in a way that is respectful. And the party of personal responsibility has decided that that is a problem for them.
Like don't get me wrong, some of my my book talk girly like dark romance girly friends, they read the trigger warnings like it is a shopping list. So
Right.
I
right.
mean,
Sure.
but it is there because someone might see a book haunting Adeline where they're like, hey, and maybe there's like a spooky ghost thing and it's like a ghost no, like, and it's got a sizable trigger warning,
Sure.
up in the front. And that is a good thing because, you don't want people to read dark romance if they're not the kind
Right.
of people that are going to enjoy it.
You don't want one of these cowardly conservatives to open a book that has two men kissing in it, and they might get feelings in their pants.
Although,
And
to
they're
be
not
fair,
ready
they
for
might
that.
actually like dark, like the conservatives might actually like the dark romance because you've got like the,
They do. They just have to cry while they're masturbating, and they don't really,
yeah, that's true.
they poor guys. Anyway, guys, listen, thanks for being here. We love you. Want to give you a quick update before we go. Franklin, there's been some signs of improvement, but I will be honest with you, it's not looking great right now. He's on some medicine. His seizures have stopped, but he doesn't. He has movement in all of his legs and his tail, but he doesn't seem very interested in trying to move his back legs. So I got to put this up on screen. So, you know, I don't think that anything dramatic is going to happen between now and next week. If it is, I'll of course update you on the Discord, but I know people are wondering about Franklin. At this point, we assume that he suffered a stroke of some kind. He's eating normally, he's drinking normally, but he is not walking. And I can get him to sit, and then he immediately lays back down, and I cannot get him to stand. And the vet said if he can sit and sit on his haunches, then he can stand, because they're the exact same muscles in his legs. So right now we assume that it was a stroke event of some kind paired with trauma. He is suffering some sort of emotional trauma from the seizures and is literally afraid to try to walk. And we hope that will go away over the next week or so. He's responding great to the medicine, and you know, I'll update you when I have more on him.
Our furry little friend.
Yeah.
Our furry little mascot.
He's a good boy. We don't deserve dogs. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. We love you, and we're going to see you next time. And we're going to talk about conservative hypocrisy. I like that a lot. We're going to talk about conservative
we could go for hours on that one.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll see you guys next time. Good night, everybody.